What's going on, guys? BigJerr back with you again. And today, I wanted to talk about something that I found really interesting. So we've all seen those Skrillex sessions that he released where he's hitting like -3 LUFS. And if you're anything like me, my mind was kind of blown. So I thought it'd be fun to challenge myself to see if I can get to -3 LUFS and get it to sound as clean as he did. I think I did it. Check this out.
Cocaine sex.
Okay, so first off, I want to say that I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't mix to -3 LUFS. It's really up to you how you want to mix. What I'm here to show you is how I think he got there, and ultimately how I was able to get that result. All right? Let's have some fun. All right, so first off, I want to say that I'm not here to advocate that you guys go and start mixing this loud. Up until seeing this video, I thought the loudness war was over. And even though I'm going to stand by it for now and say I would not have you guys mix to -3 LUFS, I still was very interested to see how he did it. And I want you to think of this more as a science experiment rather than something that I'm telling you to do. I just wanted to say that. So, that being said, let's do it. So I've made a gain staging flowchart, and I want it to be very clear. Let's go ahead and start looking at this. So the first thing that I notice he does is he uses a lot of sub buses. Okay, so I'm gonna use these same names so you can be familiar with them because that's what he used in his session, but I don't think you should put too much thought into the actual names, such as chain basic, chain hype, that kind of thing. So I've never worked with Skrillex, though it would be a dream come true. That being said, what I'm about to tell you is not like a fact of what he's doing. This is my best guess. Just wanted to put that out there before we got into it. So this is the flowchart that I put together, and I'll make this available for downloads. But what I'm gonna do is take this apart and put it back together for you piece by piece, so we all totally understand exactly what's going on, and then we'll jump into the session and show you how I applied all these steps. Let's take it all the way back to the hierarchy system of what he's using. He's got his chain basic, I'm gonna call it A. He's got his chain hype, I'm gonna call that B. And then the chain group, I'm gonna call C. And then we're gonna leave pre-master the way it is, and then master is fine. This is what I've noticed. First off, he's got a camel fat on the master. This is going to be very important. Taking a step back from there, we've got our pre-master, and that's got a ProL on it. Now, it seems to me that chain basic is pretty much where he puts all of his drop sounds, his really in-your-face sounds. And if I had to guess, I would say he's removing all the sub-frequencies from there and then limiting everything else. This will allow him to get a much tighter squeeze on those sounds because there's no sub in there taking up all that space. Then, he's got his hype chain. And in this particular situation, only the sub was being sent there. So I'm going to assume this is where he puts his sub frequencies and then limits them separately. Again, allowing you to get a tighter squeeze on these two big sounds instead of forcing them all into one limiter where you're only going to get some of that pressure. And then chain group, I'm going to call it C. This is where we glue our sub and drop synths back together, as well as adding any kind of ducking or side chaining you'd want. And as I mentioned, these are going to feed into one another. So the way this is going to work is A and B are going to get fed into C. And then C is going to go directly to the pre-master. And then the pre-master gets sent right to the master. So now that you guys understand at least what I think's going on within these chains, let's talk about where the instruments are going. So as I mentioned, all the drop synths or drop sounds are going to be fed into chain basic or A. And then all the sub sounds are going to be fed into the hype chain or B in our case. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Now I noticed that the vocals are being sent directly to the master. So whatever processing happens on the vocals or the vocal bus is all that's happening for that. And it's being sent right to the master. By doing this, you're creating some real separation between your vocals and your music, which in this case is good because your vocals could be left more dynamic while still compressing heavily on your drop sounds and sub. Finally, the last thing I want to mention before jumping into the session is that there are certain things that he sends to the pre-master, like his drums, his effects, and most of his musical instruments, meaning things that are not supposed to be as in your face or as aggressive. This gives yet a third level of focus. So we've got 3 different compression levels now, guys. All right, keep that in mind. All right, now let's get into the session and see this in action. But before we jump into it, let me encourage you guys to hit that subscribe button and the little bell. It'll keep you notified every time I have a new video. As an Ableton certified trainer and instructor at Icon Collective, Warp Academy, and Evident, I talk about everything from sound design to cool plugins you need to know about to tips and tricks on Ableton. I also do some finger drumming here and some cool original music, so stay connected. Okay, this is my session. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down slowly. I'll let you see that certain things are being sent to my pre-master. You can see my sub is being sent to our chain hype. Drop sounds are being sent to the chain basic. Vocals are being sent right to the master. All the way down, you can see effects are going to the pre-master. And here are my bottom 3 guys. All right, if we look at this, you can see that I have a ProQ3 simply cutting out the sub, and then a limiter going and limiting them. Okay, on the hype chain, did a little EQing, and then went ahead and limited that. Then I've got my group C. Here, for now, I've got a basic sidechain. I'll probably do some volume shaping later, but you could put anything you want to go ahead and duck or sidechain your sounds here. You can go ahead and glue them together and an EQ here in case you want to go ahead and carve out your sound a little bit more. I don't think I'm doing anything in this case. And then finally, on the master, we've got our camel fat. And in this situation, I found it best to go ahead and crank the compression and then use the mix knob and see how much you like. So let's go ahead and turn things on and off and see how they sound. I'll zoom in here and let's just see what's going on in chain A. Okay, so that is your synths, and we're able to get them super aggressive because, again, we're not pumping any sub in there. So on B, you could hear we've got our sub coming through. All right, now those 2 guys are going to be fed into C, and that's where we're going to start doing our side chaining. Let's solo that, and let me show you what's interesting here. So I'm going to head up here and I'm going to go ahead and turn off our chain basic and watch what happens to the sub. Let's see how much the sub is actually getting pushed into this limiter. So I do have this as a helpful hint labeled on your chart that I gave you guys. So let me call your attention to it. What we need to do is be careful of the way we're feeding into C. All right, we have to be aware of what it sounds like. Now, one of the things we got to keep in mind when mixing this loud is the sub. The sub takes up a lot of room when we're going to go ahead and glue them back together. So we have to give the synths the appropriate amount of room. In this case, the sub doesn't even hit the limiter on C. Keep that in mind when you guys are trying this. Finally, let's head over to the master and I'll show you guys what this does. Let me put this up and let's go ahead and play the mix. And then let me turn off my camel fat. Now check out what's going on here. And it's definitely pretty loud, right? I mean, that's pretty good. But once we put this guy on, watch what happens. So you saw we were able to take it from a negative 4.6 up to that negative 3.0. And it didn't sound too crazy. I mean, we could definitely dial it in and finesse it. I might have been pushing it a little bit for effect, but you get the point. Okay, so finally, I want to give you guys some things to keep in mind when trying to mix this loud. Like I mentioned earlier, be careful of your levels when feeding A and B into C, especially the level of the sub. Remember to respect that sub space in there. After a little bit of experimenting, I'm sure you guys are going to get it. Now, another thing I want to say is you must keep all of your sounds extremely clean when using this amount of compression. And what I mean by that is looking at Skrillex's session, he was using multiple ProLs on individual sounds as well as buses, not to mention all the OTTs he was using. And this again is how you're going to beef up your sound. But with this much compression, everything comes into the light. So How do we fix this? This just means EQing is essential. Just remember, the cleaner you can make the sound, the louder you can make it. Finally, one thing to think about is when using all of these ProLs, or any limiter for that matter, learn to listen to hear the changes your limiter makes to your buses and to your sounds in general, because we saw he was using them on individual sounds. Learn to hear how it changes your sound. Also, learn to feel how it seems to add pressure to your sound. And then learn to control the amount of pressure you add. And above all else, guys, when mixing this loud, don't overdo it. If that's even possible when trying to mix to -3 LUFS. If you guys want to see any of these steps demoed in more detail, please let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to do it for you guys. Alright guys, I hope you found that interesting and educational. If you did, please hit that like button and that subscribe button. It really helps keep me on point getting these videos out for you. Other than that, if you have any questions about this, leave them down in the comments. I always get back to you guys. Alright? Catch you next time. See ya.